Alright guys, we're going to be doing the bottom end rebuild on this 2003 cr125 engine. This probably applies to a bunch of other engines though, because they're all pretty similar on dirt bikes. I'm using a wrench rabbit rebuild kit on this build, so I will let you guys know how that goes and what I think of the kit throughout, because I've heard mixed reviews from people. Okay, well these cases are all ready to go. We got all the bearings out and the gaskets off. If you guys want to watch us tear down this engine, I will put that up in the top right corner, but this video is going to be specifically rebuilding these cases here. What we're going to start off with is sanding down these sealing surfaces. As you can see, they're still a little dirty. There's some small scratches in them, so we're going to lightly sand them to remove those and help these cases come together and seal better. When I go to clean the cases, I'm going to use a long sanding block with 600 grit sandpaper. Don't do anything more aggressive than 600. You're just brazing over the cases lightly. You want a long sanding block so it's even across. You don't want to get one side down farther. I only recommend doing this if you have small little scratches in your cases just from use and taking them apart. This will not take out any deep scratches. If you have a deep scratch, you'll need a bigger repair than just sanding it. Okay, now we've just flipped the case over to the other side, and we're going to get the other side cleaned up as well. Alright, we now finished sanding the cases, but the next step would be to clean out the slots where our bearings are going to go into. These little holes can get dirt into them, and I've already cleaned it out. Just take a little Simple Green and a paper towel and just wipe in there, and it should get it clean enough to slide the bearings in. Any dirt in there will cause excessive wear. Alright, so the first step for the case is going to be, we're going to heat them up, because we're going to put all these new bearings in that go into these holes here. And to fit them in, it's a press fit, so you're going to want to heat your case. I'm going to heat mine to about 300 degrees, and then I have had the bearings in the freezer for about 8 hours. So you want to do one case at a time, most likely, unless you're really experienced and can work really fast. But if you're an amateur, it's definitely best to do one case at a time. You're going to put your case on tinfoil here so you don't damage it. And I want to say that I really like this oven here. It's really small, it's compact, and you don't have to worry about the bulkiness of having a full-on oven in your shop. And you don't have to worry about wiring 220 in. So I'll put something similar to this or this exact model down in the description for you guys. Now I'm going to set this at 350 degrees and put it on bake. And I'm going to set it for 40 minutes here. One thing that I see a lot of people struggle with when they're first learning to rebuild engines is actually inserting the bearings. The biggest way to help with this is to get at least a 175 degree difference between your case and your bearings. Anything less than 175 degrees, you're going to have an issue installing them, and they're going to get stuck, and you're going to have to reheat the cases and start over. So make sure your case is at least 175 degrees hotter than the bearings. Okay, we got our bearings out of the freezer, and they seem to all be reading 37 degrees, so we should be good to go. Alright, this guy is done in here, so we can remove it. Make sure to have some good protection gloves on, using welding gloves. It's still pretty hot. Take this guy over. Okay, let's check the temperature on the right side case, and it's about 225 degrees. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and install our right side main bearing here. Both sides on this guy look the same, so it doesn't really matter which way you put it in. I'm going to go letters up because that's the way it came out. And you'll just want to set it in there and try and get it straight, and it'll drop right into the case. If it doesn't go straight, then you know you did something wrong. Now that we got our main bearing in, we want to check that the inner race moves independently of the outer race, and we can see that it does. Now we want to put our shift drum bearing in, and we want to work fast and get all the bearings in before they get too close in temperature to the case. This guy popped right in. Now we're going to go ahead and pop in the bearing for our output shaft. Now we're just going to put in our main shaft bearing here and lightly tap around it with a screwdriver to make sure it's going in evenly. And we're going to finish off the right side bearings by popping in these two smaller guys here. I want to point out that these bearings did not come with the Wrench Rabbit kit. I had to order these OEM. Okay, now I'm going to hit these bearings here with some WD-40 because of the condensation they had from being in the freezer. This will just make sure they don't rust, so you don't have any issues with them rusting over. The next step is going to be taking this Maxima assembly lube. That's what I like to use, and we're just going to put it in the bearings for when we start up the engine. Make sure we have enough lubrication. What I like about this Wrench Rabbit kit so far is some of these bearings did come pre-oiled, but I'm just going to add a little bit extra. Alright, when people are rebuilding their engine, the biggest mistake I see for people who haven't done it before is improper placement of the oil seal. There's a couple things that you need to do to ensure that you're not going to have an issue. So definitely check your manufacturer specifications because these will help you out a big time. So you can see here, we're looking at the right crankshaft oil seal. So obviously the crankshaft fits into here, and then this is the right case. So this would be the right oil seal. And this is a cutout of it from the side. So it's like you're looking at the oil seal from this, but chopped in half. And you can see the lips are facing this way. So you have the lips going inwards. This is the crankshaft, and there's the center of it. So you have the lips going inwards towards the center of the crankshaft. You wouldn't want to put it like this. Sometimes people put this backwards and then they'll get blow by of their oil and they'll wonder why their engine's smoking or running so bad. You want to make sure to put it in like this. Mostly, there's a little spring in here. About 95% of the time, the spring is going to face. So when in doubt, you're going to want to put that spring towards your crankshaft. Now, I have had an engine before where the spring goes the opposite way. I've only had one engine do that, so I would stick to this when in doubt. But basically, it says pack grease. You always want to look at your manufacturer specification because it could be different than this, but pack grease into the cavity between the oil seal lips. Press the oil seals into the crankcase using the crankcase assembly tool until seals are flush with the case as shown. Basically what that means is it wants us to take some grease here using some Maxima waterproof grease. Just get some on your finger and pretty much just pack in between these lips here. Put a little bit around the outside. Now this guy's ready to pop in there. Now it says to using the crankcase assembly tool, so I'm gonna go grab that. Okay, this is my Tusk crankcase assembly tool, and I'm just gonna use this guy. I'm gonna use this guy to evenly press the seal in there. Another big mistake that you'll make is getting your seal in there uneven, and then you'll get oil that blows by it. Just so you guys can get a better sense of where we are in the engine, this is our crankshaft bearing, also considered a main bearing. This is our main shaft bearing here. This is where the main shaft of the transmission goes. This is the counter shaft, where the counter shaft of the transmission goes. And then this will be our shift drum bearing here, just so you guys can get a better sense of where we are on the engine. Alright, now for our shift drum bearing, we're going to put our locking tabs on. Now for these bolts, I'm going to put some thread locker on here. Make sure that tab stays even with the bearing. Alright, now you're going to want to torque these guys down to 7 foot-pounds. And after you get them torqued down, we can start on the bearings on the other case. Alright, we now have this case set up and ready to go, and I have all the bearings organized here, so we know where they go when it's time to slide them in. You want to have an idea of where they go before you just go to put them in. One thing to watch for is this bearing with a lip here. You want that lip to go up, because the clips here that you tighten down into it have to fit into that lip. If that lip were to go down, it wouldn't hold the bearing in correctly. Alright, we got the case out, and now I'm just going to pop all these bearings in real quick. I'm not going to get into too much detail since I did on the other case. Now is a good time, while your case is still hot, to pull out these stud bolts here that hold your cylinder on. I'm going to thread one nut on like this, and we're going to tighten the other nut against it. You're going to want to use an impact to do this, or something of that nature. Get them nice and tight. Take your 12mm wrench. The left oil seal appears to be facing ring side in, same as the other one. And it also wants us to grease up the oil seal. Okay, we got the oil seal all packed, so we're gonna drive it in there. Okay, we got the oil seal in there evenly, and now we're just gonna take a socket with an extension on it. You want the socket to fit the outer race of the, or the outer area of the oil seal evenly. Make sure it's going in there evenly, and then just take a mallet. It's a little uneven, as you can see. It's hard to see, but this left side's in there. It's a little bit lower than this crease, so I'm going to work on this right side a little bit more, see if I can even it out. That looks good. Then we gotta slide this metal bushing in here. See there's a chamfered edge. The chamfered edge goes down. Next, we're gonna pop in the oil seal for the shifter. These smaller ones you can just work in by hand. You don't need to drive them in there since they're so small. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and install the locking tabs for this bearing for the output shaft or the counter shaft on the left side crankcase. Also, it's really important that you have some sort of thread locker on these bolts here. Now we can just tighten these guys down. It'll be 7 foot-pounds for the torque spec. Okay, so I went to put in the crank because my case was still a little warm. I thought it might go in, it didn't end up going in. So I'm gonna have to freeze the crank and heat up this bearing. But whenever you're heating up a bearing with the seal on the back, you don't wanna do that because it could damage the seal. So I'm gonna remove this seal. Out of here. And then I'll put it back in after I get the crank back. Put the crank in. Alright, while we're waiting for the crank to freeze up, I'm just going to inspect our transmission with the diagram here and make sure we have everything. I'm not going to show everything here when I go to pull it apart, but I'm just going to show you how I do it, just because I don't want to bore you guys with me checking it over, but I just take off each part, flip it to the left, so I know when I put it back on, everything has to be flipped to the right. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm taking the heat gun and I'm heating up the right side case. So we're back on the right side case and I'm heating it up and it's about 200 degrees, so it should be ready for the crankcase to slide into. The reason why I'm putting the crankshaft to slide into, the reason why I'm putting the crankshaft into this right case is because the manufacturer specifications tell us to build from the right. As usual, I'll put this tool, the heat gun, in the description, but if you don't have one, you can just pour water on there, and if it boils, then you know it's hot enough. Alright, we now got our crankshaft out of the freezer. Had it in there for about 8 hours. I went ahead and wiped off most of the condensation on this guy, and now I'm just going to wiggle the crankshaft around and find that sweet spot where it will just pop in like it did there. Same as our other bearings, there's a little bearing that the connecting rod attaches to on the crankshaft, and that bearing you don't want to rust from the condensation, so we're going to put some WD-40 on it as well. And just put some throughout the crankshaft so it doesn't rust. Now we'll go ahead and just hit that bearing with some assembly lube. And I'm just going to spin the crankshaft over, and it spins so good. I'm super happy with how it feels. Now we can take our socket and drive this oil seal that we removed back into the case. Okay, to get our transmission shafts in, we're just going to rest the case up on a block of wood here so we can fit these shafts all the way in. We're going to want to take our gears, wiggle them around, get them lined up. There we go. Just want to slide them into the holes here. It's kind of a hard thing to do. Running out of room. There we go. Okay, we got both our shafts in there. Alright, now we're going to install our shift forks and then our shift drum. You want to refer to your service manual for for where each of these goes. On this one, you'll want the letter like center and left pointing up. You don't want the KZ4 pointing up, you want this one. And then these will only fit into one spot on this bike. On other bikes, they might fit into multiple spots, so you want to check your service manual for where it goes. But you're not going to mess it up on this Honda because they only made it so it can fit on one spot. Basically, you just take it. There's these little slots in between the gears where you can put your shift fork into. Be pretty obvious when you find them. It slides in, then you're able to actuate the gears with them. Here's the one for the center shaft. Then what we'll do next is we'll disengage all of these, get them away, and then we'll pop in our shift drum. This one again, the shift drum only fits in one way, but usually this guy will need to go this way so we can use the shift drum. So we'll put the shift drum in here. And then we'll pop our shift forks into it. It'll be pretty obvious what spot can't fit into there, so it's got to go into this middle section here. And then for these ones, this one goes into the top section of the shift drum. And then this bottom one pops into the bottom section. The bottom one can be a little hard to get to. But there we go. These things are a little finicky to get in sometimes, but we got them all in. You guys probably couldn't see me get the bottom one in, but I just lifted it up a little bit and slid it into that bottom hole. Now we're gonna put our arm here for the forks and press it all the way in there. And then for the other fork, this one popped out. Pop that guy in there. And now we have that assembly together. And there's a couple of ways we can verify it's working. So all the way over this way is neutral. So when I spin this shaft, these guys should spin. Oh wait, no, that's first. All right, excuse me, we're in first right now, the farthest way over. So when I spin this one, I should be able to grab that one, and I shouldn't be able to stop it while spinning this one. That's how you know you're in first. And then to go into neutral, you just go over this hump here. See, we come around and then goes up in the hump, and we come right back down on that hump, and now we should be in neutral. You see the shafts. I can spin this one, but the other one doesn't spin, the top part. Some of the gears will still spin, but that's okay. So now we know we found neutral. And then as we keep going, we'll shift. Now we're in second gear. And yeah, it's pretty much how it works. Basically, you'll want to take a straight edge so you know you have your assemblies correctly assembled. And you'll lay it across both of the transmission top gears. And you want them to be level. So you can see that on top of this washer and this top gear, it's got to be level to fit into this case. If these were unlevel, then it's possible the bearings they fit into on this case are unlevel also. So you want to measure that, but these ones appear to be level. So these ones need to be level as well. And ours are level, so we can assume that we have everything installed correctly. Okay, we're gonna install the dowel pins now, and they're a common thing to rust and seize up, so we're gonna use some Permatex anti-seize lubricant. I will put this stuff down in the description as well as every other product that I've used throughout this assembly process. Alright, after we put some anti-seize on this dowel pin, go ahead and pop it in there. Put some more on the other one. Work it around on there. Pop it in. Forgot to mention this to you guys, but you want to coat all your shifting, get in each passage of the shift drum, your shift forks, your gears. You just want to get some assembly lube all over those because those are going to be some important parts when you go to start them up. They're going to be spinning right away, so want to make sure they have lubricant on them. Then work it around a little bit on your shift drum and shift fork. Yeah. Perfect. Alright, well I think we're going to call that good for today. We got all the transmission and the crankshaft in, and next time we'll just pop that other case on there and start putting the clutch and the shifting assembly and that kind of stuff on there. Got some really good stuff coming the way for you guys though. Going to be dressing up this engine. It's going to look pretty sick, and the rest of this build is going to be pretty awesome. So if you guys want to check that out and see the next part of this bottom end rebuild, subscribe to the channel and I'll keep that coming your way.